When we talk about the shoulder press, and in particular the kettlebell shoulder press, this is something we see often when we ask people to collect the weight, and actually this is their starting press position. Why is this so bad? Well, as we can see, it probably feels quite comfortable there, but as soon as, and I'm not going to ask Josh to do it, but as soon as he would potentially go to press that, the shoulder is now sitting out away, almost away from the nice place that he likes to be in, that socket there, and he's going to put force through that joint in an extended position there, which is very, very painful, or could lead to maybe injuries and pain. So, however, what we want to try and do, and I'm going to teach this from the beginning, is to show you how to collect, actually brace up and stack, ready for the press and the particularly proper kettlebell press, versus the one we see that we've just seen Josh do there in the background. Now, first off, actually going to put it on the floor, please. We're going to collect the weight with a nice hip hinge. Okay, we've got videos on those first. We're going to draw the weight up, rotate underneath, and actually clean it into the crook of the arm. So if we collect that weight, it's going to be now tucked in nice and tight. He's going to get that sitting into the crook of the arm. There's going to be a cock of the wrist there, so that the weight actually sits against there. It's not pressing. Now, if I ask you just to straighten your wrist for me, please, so straighten the wrist. That is quite a painful position, and people they actually go and revert back to putting the weight out on the shoulder, because this digs right into that. There's sometimes you've got a few veins there that actually feel quite painful to be pushing against, and some blood flow could get restricted. So actually, by cocking the wrist slightly, it makes it a little bit more comfortable. Now, obviously, if you're someone who's unconditioned to exercise, any particular weight might not feel great. So it does take a little bit of time to get used to that position exactly, but that actually sits very nicely within the arm, the wrist, and the crook of the arm there. It's actually on Josh's bicep. He's got bigger muscles than some people, obviously, but it's still a comfortable position to be in. That's actually stacked nicely as well. It's not a super heavy weight for Josh, but he still has to tense up, and you might see that he's braced up. His chest is nice and tight because he's got that weight there held in the arm. He's actually braced his core and midsection. He's stacked his chest by breathing in through the nose and actually drawing that down into the chest, below the chest, into the abdomen. He's braced up the midsection, and he's actually planted his feet nice and strongly on the floor, all stacked nice and upright. Now, if we can quickly go back to the bad position, please. As soon as he does that, the weight's so far up and out there, he has to shift his weight, and if you can see the back, his lower back might be twisted slightly. The spine is trying to counteract all that. You can't see through his t-shirt, obviously, the musculature, but there's a lot of twist and tension there that we really don't want to be pressing from that angle. So if we go back to the good one, okay, rest it if you want to, it's up to you. We're going to go through where that is under his chin. Okay, that is a nice tucked starting position there. In order to actually engage and start a movement, strong grip, of course, is going to be key. Okay, so as soon as you start gripping the weight, you're going to tense your forearm, your bicep, your shoulder. Everything's going to stay nice and locked out and strong. You're going to take that slightly away, because as we know, the shoulder it can work forward there, but it wants to almost, if we're going to go for an overhead position, wants to go away slightly from the body to clear that, press straight up, then back down nice and steady, the way tucking the elbow back in, the way it came, okay, and back into there. If we go back to the overhead position and stay there, so again, if you notice, everything stays nice and strict and stacked. That obviously with the weight overhead, there may well be a slight lean, but that's where you need to stay planted with your feet, the hips nice and strong, squeezing the glutes almost, to keep the body straight and upright, versus leaning like a banana. And again, it's quite a dangerous position to be in. The weight's not super light, super heavy, but it's not comfortable to actually lean away from that weight, push the hips that way to counteract that weight on the lower back especially. So we've got to stay stacked, we've got to stay upright, okay, and bring that weight back in. Now rest it for a second, because I know it's been in your arm for a while. What we do not want to see when people collect that weight is obviously a slack shoulder for a start, okay, because if you throw that weight out there and it catches you off, there's only one way it's going to go, and that's back, and that's leading to injury for sure. So the best way to do it, as we saw earlier, is clean the weight, as we call it, up into that rack position, stay tight and hold it there. Now, it's not an easy position to be in. We're not going to ask people, if we ask them in the group sessions and our training, to stay there for a long time, because it is quite a stressed position. That does feel better, because obviously the weight is resting on the shoulder, but it's the incorrect one. We do not want to lead and press from that position at all. So collecting there, bracing up as we've seen. Okay, we go through the points again. Tense up first, press straight up overhead, and just naturally let the elbow come back in, tucking under the chin. And that guiding there, okay, if you had the other hand there just as a guide, you can almost bring it back in, so using that left hand up on by your chin almost. That's a great position to come back to every time. And again, you'll see that it's a nice natural rotation of the shoulder out, up overhead, and back in to the start position. So if we go back, if you're looking back at the start, very poor start position that we had, if you can relate to that and you're something you do, look at what Josh has done and those correct reps and try and replicate that. Practice that in front of the mirror especially, even with no weight, just rotating out, pressing, coming back in, and you'll be accelerating your overhead press so much more. Now, one thing I want to go on to now is the weight you use. If you're comfortable pressing that weight from there, well, it might not be comfortable as such, but it might be something you can do. Don't be surprised if you have to lighten the weight when you come to this position and relearn the movement, because it will feel different. It's a slightly under conditioned movement that you might have done. So make sure to drop down the weight, go through the technique correctly first, and then progress the weight when it feels easier. And you should see your strength improve, your shoulder pain, if you've got it, potentially ease off, and you'll really enjoy your workout more when you can press correctly.